Okay, what's going on, guys? Glad to have you back. It's time for another Q&A. If you don't know the drill, basically what I ask is if you got a question that you want answered on video, the best way to get that done is to leave that question in the comments section of my most recent Q&A video. That's going to be this one for now. If you're interested in what's going on with the battery test and how the batteries are holding up to my abuse, that will be at the end of the video. So first we're going to do the Q&A section, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the battery. So hang in there. All right, let's dive right in with the first question. So my first question this week comes from Michael Ramirez. He says, "Hi Kevin, could I use isopropyl alcohol to clean my flight controller?" Now, as far as cleaning the flight controller, I'm assuming that you're talking about getting rid of any of the flux or resin from doing the solder job. Maybe you're just talking about dirt and stuff. The thing that I like to use to clean off electronic components is denatured alcohol. So this is what I use. It works great. Yeah, just put it on like a cotton ball and rub it, or a paper towel, and you can get rid of dirt, grime, flux, just about anything. Pine sap from trees. Works great at cleaning things and dries off very quickly. So I'll throw a link to that stuff in the description. You can get it on Amazon or wherever. Probably find that locally as well. Next question. Dun, 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 dun. So this question has been asked by a ton of people, and it's kind of on me because on my very first waterproofing video, I cut out the section where I showed myself waterproofing the board cam, the HS1177, the Runcam Swift, whatever you want to call it, whichever brand you're flying, it's the same thing. So G Nice, along with a ton of other people, asked, "Hey Kevin, I'm curious about your flight cam. What do you do to prevent water from damaging it, if any?" What I do with the flight camera is I take it apart because on the inside it's a circuit board. So just take out the back screws, open up the case, and you'll be left with a little circuit board, which I don't have any laying around. Depending on whether it's conformal coating or Corrosion X, you're going to apply both of them the same way. You want to paint it on. You don't want to spray it on, because if you spray it on, you're going to get it on the glass that is covering the sensor, and you're never going to have a clear image ever again. That section doesn't need to be waterproof. Just everything else on the circuit board. So you're going to paint the whole back of the circuit board. You're going to paint the whole front of the circuit board. You're going to paint all of the little connectors where the sensor is mounted onto the circuit board. As far as the connectors in the back, don't do conformal coating on that. Connectors, as everything else, gets Corrosion X. So yeah, just paint it on, be very careful not to get it on the sensor, then reassemble the camera, and if you submerge that camera, it should still be safe. Next question. Mari Goldstein. Holy cow, Mari, you asked a lot of questions, but thank you. You asked a lot of really good questions. So we're gonna answer several of these. Number one, drone retrieval from a rooftop. How do you guys do it? Or even tree removal. What do you guys use? Okay, so drone retrieval is when you get it stuck in things, is a tricky scenario. If it's low enough and you can just shake the tree, I'll grab the branch and shake the tree. Once it gets higher, if it's on a branch away from the trunk, I use a slingshot and fishing line with a fishing weight to get something draped across the branch that needs to be shaken. And if I need to shake it really hard, I'll pull up a heavier line, like a piece of rope, with the fishing line that I kind of draped with the slingshot and fishing weight. So then you just get two people or grab both ends yourself, pull, shake the branch until it comes loose. If it's near the trunk of the tree, that's going to be a little bit more of a problem. Most of the time, if it's really close to the trunk of the tree, that means you can't really shake anything. If it's too high to throw stuff at it, to knock it down, or to shoot it with something from the slingshot, then you're going to be looking at either climbing the tree yourself or hiring somebody to do it. There's a guy here in Atlanta that is an arborist and will come out and climb the tree. I think he charges, I don't know, 50 or 60 bucks. I'm sure there's someone in your area that would be willing to climb the tree for a fee as well. But the only time that that's really useful is when it's close to the trunk and really high up. So, stuck on a roof. I've only had that happen once, and we were lucky that there weren't any gutters on the roof. It was a metal roof, so it was nice and slick. And all I did there is I took mason's twine, tied a stick to the end of the twine, and then took it and wrapped it around the stick, wrapping a bunch of pine cones onto the stick so that you had just a tied mass of pine cone and stick, like this big thing that you could chuck up there and then pull down. So we would throw it onto the roof, try to land up above the quad, and then drag it down just because it was so big and hit the thing and drag it off the roof. And it took several throws, but we were eventually able to drag the quad off the roof that way. There's probably better ways, but those are the ways that I have done up till now. So that's my drone retrieval techniques. So next from Mari, have you tried Racecraft props? Okay, so I'm gonna be real brief on this. I have tried Racecraft props. They were the first PC props that I used. The 5x4x3 that they originally had was a good racing prop. In my experience, it survived crashes and run-ins with the gate or other quads. The only downside with that was for freestyle for me at idle throttle, when there wasn't a whole lot of pressure on the blades. If you were flowing through the air just the right way, the blade would kind of wobble and cause oscillations that just couldn't be tuned out because it was the blade itself. Now that was that one prop design. They have many other kinds of props that I really can't speak to because I haven't used them enough to make any kind of judgments on those. That was my take on the first Racecraft prop. I think they're doing good things. More people in the space is always a good thing. For me, I'm sponsored by HQ Props. I really like the new 543 V1S props. I don't have any of those issues with these props. They fly great. I like them. They survive crashes. Yada yada yada. Next, last one from Mari. Black box logs. Do you use them? I do use black box logs. I'm not a black box expert. Let me just say that. It's rare that I get into using it because it requires a very specific kind of problem that I know how to solve. Say, it feels like the quad isn't producing as much power as it normally would. What I would do is run the black box, check the flight, and if you see that one motor, when you do a full throttle punch out, one motor is saying that it's commanding full throttle for that motor, and the other three are like at 60% throttle, the reason is because the one it's telling full throttle is not making full power. It's only making about 60% power, so it's having to bring the throttle down on the other three to compensate. And so that kind of diagnoses which motor or ESC you have an issue with. Simple things. I'm not a black box expert. All right, next question we have from Adam Komarek. I use the Turnigy lipo warmer to keep my lipos nice and warm pre-flight in the winter, and it's awesome. Do you keep your lipos warmed in a similar method or at all? Okay, so in the winters here, this winter in particular has been very, very mild. The temperatures have stayed in the 50s to the 70s. We even had 80-degree days in January. It's been crazy. Had a few cold days, but for the most part, the weather here, when I leave the house, the batteries are at room temperature, which is, pretty good. And when I have a huge bag full of them, they tend to maintain that temperature unless it's really cold outside. So on the days where it is really cold outside, my technique is I just stuff the batteries in my pocket. So get to the spot, immediately throw 4, 5, 6, however many batteries I can fit into my pockets to keep them close to my body and nice and toasty. And as I use a battery and take one out of the pocket, I put another one in so that I am constantly warming them up. If it were really cold, I'd think about putting some of those little chemical hand warmers in my pockets as well, but it really hasn't been an issue for me. I can imagine in places where it is a lot colder, a lot more often, that a lipo warmer would be a useful thing. Just doesn't really seem to be necessary for myself. Next question. Corbin D. How often do you damage a motor that either need to be entirely replaced or the bell shaft changed? Are there motors that you can buy just the bell for? I have seen motors in the past which offer the bell, like just a replacement bell. I can't think it. The last time I remember seeing one was like the old Cobra 2204. Man, that's been seems like it's been forever, but it's really not been that long ago. How often do I damage a motor to the point that it needs replacing? I will say this, before Betaflight 3, the filtering was not as good in Betaflight, and I would pretty much kill a motor like once a month, easily. Since Betaflight 3, I find that I can fly with a much more damaged motor. And by damaged, I just mean like the shaft's bent a little bit or it's dented a little bit here or there that makes it unbalanced so that it causes vibrations on the craft that then the flight controller has to deal with. I find the notch filtering on Betaflight 3 really deals well with that and lets you run motors beyond what was considered what I would have considered usable in the past. And so now I've gotten it to where I'm pretty much only killing a motor maybe every 2 or 3 months that I'm having to actually retire one. I don't know. It just depends, because I could go out and kill 2 motors in a day, or I could not kill a motor for 3 months. So a lot of that just has to do with where you're flying and kind of the luck of the draw. Next question. Guillermo Centora, what about the motors? Now this was on the how waterproof is your drone video, so this is obviously in response to waterproofing. And what about the motors? The motors are already waterproof. Brushless motors, by their very nature, don't require any waterproofing. The bearings can kind of take some... It's not going to be easy on the bearings. It's going to break down some of the lubrication that is inside of that. But as far as the electronics wise, when you look at a brushless motor, you have the windings and you have magnets around the outside of the bell. So the magnets on the bell, they don't need water. They're just magnets. The windings, those are carrying electricity, but in order to keep them from shorting out on themselves, because you see how they're all just bunched in there, and you know, copper wire to copper wire, to make sure that the electricity flows around all of the loops in the way that you need it to, they're coated with something to ensure that they don't short out on each other, which also prevents them from shorting out on water. So if you get water in there, it's not going to cause any kind of a short unless you already have damage to it, like scratches and stuff. So brushless motors, waterproof on their own, don't require any additional waterproofing. So, and that is going to do it for our questions today. Okay, that brings us to the final thing that I want to talk about today, and that's going to be the state of my current battery experiment. So the first thing I want to talk about with the battery experiment is going to be the fact that I had a lot of suggestions that I should track the cycles and the internal resistance of the batteries as they go throughout their lifespan. And that's an excellent idea. So the way I'm going to do that is that when I go away for trips to work, because I'm not going to be flying my packs for, several days, I go ahead and put those packs at storage voltage for that time. Internal resistance can vary depending on the voltage of the battery. So if you test it at full or if you test it at empty, it will be different. So a good opportunity for me to do roughly once a week checks on the batteries is to check them while they're at storage voltage, check the internal resistance while it's at storage voltage, and keep a log of that. So I'm going to be doing that. The link to the Google Doc where I'm going to keep track of that is, as I pointed earlier, is down in the description below. So you guys can all go and take a look at that. I've only recorded one reading so far because I wasn't thinking about this ahead of time. So they have about 2 weeks worth of cycles on them, and since it's not exact, I don't want to try to keep an exact tally. And if you recall, they're split into 4 groups. We have the R, the M, the C, and the G groups. And so what I'm going to do for cycles, I think, is I'm just going to leave a check mark or an I and just kind of slashes each time I put an R or a C or whatever on the charger. It's not going to be an exact way to keep track of the cycles. I'll make a note saying that there was probably 4 to 6 cycles on each battery prior to tracking the cycles. So not an exact science, but it's going to be a little bit of something, and we're going to get to track the internal resistance. Now, the downside, big downside, is this battery is dead. And I want to talk about battery safety for a minute. As I mentioned earlier, I'm tracking the internal resistance now. If I hadn't have done this test, I could have had a fire very, very easily, because this battery I'm holding right here, when I left for work was fine. I put it at storage voltage along with all the other packs. It balanced, it was fine. It went to the 3.85 volts per cell, just fine. I put it in a LipoSafe bag, took off, went to work, came back a week later, not a week, but like 3 or 4 days later, and when I went to check the battery, it said cell error, and I was like, well, that can't be, it was fine. But if you can see this, I don't even know if, okay, right here, this little dent, that dent, this cell right there on the top, on the bottom top, however you want to look at it, side of the battery, is dead. It's at 0 volts now, just off of that little dent. Now, I've had lots of batteries get dents, and sometimes the internal resistance in that cell goes up. Sometimes they're fine and they keep operating. I mean, look at this guy. It's like banged up on all sides. This one has scraped the concrete many times, busted all over. I've got batteries that are retired that look way worse than either of those. It was a fluke. I think some cells, if you just hit them just right, it's going to die. This one died. I'm glad I didn't put it on the charger with the rest of the batteries and caught it early on. So that's going to be one data point that's going to be missing from my test. Unfortunately, I'm just going to have to go forward with it as is and keep testing the battery. So yeah, I will be tracking the internal resistance. You can see that in the Google Docs below. I will be tracking the cycles loosely because I'm not tracking each individual battery. I don't want to deal with that. So I'm just going to make a little mark each time one of the letters comes across the charger. And that will give you a rough idea of how many cycles each one is getting. That will wrap us up for today, guys. Thanks for joining again. I really appreciate your all's questions. It lets me do these videos. So please, if you have a question that you want to see answered in an upcoming video, leave it in the comments below. Let me know what you think about the battery test and how that's going. I appreciate you guys coming out. If you found this info helpful, please click the like button. Check out the other videos. I've got a lot of really cool flying videos recently. Some of my better flying, I think, has been happening in the last couple of weeks. So definitely go check that out. All right, guys, as always, we will see you next time. Thanks for stopping by. Bye.